The last warm day is over, and you can feel it. The herds are thinning. The plants you lived on all summer are dead or buried. And the cold rolling in isn't just uncomfortable. It's a clock. From the first frost, you've got maybe 5 months of stored food, stored fat, and stored luck. Run out of any of them before spring, and there is no second chance. For most of human history, winter wasn't a season. It was a countdown to see who was still breathing when it ended. Today, winter is a mood. You turn up the heat. You open a fridge that is somehow full of fresh food in the dead of January, which, to every human who came before you, would look like actual witchcraft. You complain about the cold for the 10 seconds between a warm car and a warm building. Then you forget it exists. But 30,000 years ago, the first frost wasn't cozy. It was a starting gun. And whether you saw spring depended on choices you'd already made months earlier, back in the sunshine, when winter still felt like someone else's problem. Here's what makes winter so vicious. It attacks from 2 sides at once. Your body suddenly needs far more energy to stay warm, and at the exact same moment, the food that provides that energy vanishes. Fuel demand spikes. Fuel supply collapses. Same few weeks. That's the trap, and every animal on Earth has to solve it somehow. Most of them cheat. Bears eat everything and sleep through it. Birds just leave. Others grow thick fur and power down. Humans can do none of that. We can't hibernate. We can't grow a coat. And for most of our history, we couldn't flee south either, because south was already packed with other humans who'd happily kill you for trying. So, we were stuck. A basically hairless tropical animal with an enormous hungry brain trying to outlast a season we were never built for. The only way through was to prepare. The first preparation happened inside your own body. All autumn, when food was everywhere, you didn't eat to feel full. You ate to store. Every extra meal became fat, a slow-burning battery for the cold months ahead. This is the entire reason feasting exists. A big autumn kill wasn't gluttony, it was you charging up while you still could. But your body has a storage limit. You cannot fatten yourself enough to coast through 5 months the way a bear can, so your own fat was never going to be enough. And we know a lot of people ran the tank dry, because you can read it in their bones. Repeated starvation leaves marks, faint stress lines in bones, and defects in tooth enamel that form when growth stalls from hunger. Archaeologists find them over and over, often on a seasonal beat. Winter, carved straight into the skeleton, as the time of year the body was quietly starving. So if your body couldn't hold enough, you stored food outside of it. And here humans pulled off something genuinely brilliant. They took the thing trying to kill them and turned it into a tool. Cold preserves food. So, up north, people used the frozen ground as a freezer, burying meat from a big kill in cold earth, or packing it into permafrost, where it kept for months. Archaeologists have found storage pits at ancient camps, deliberately dug, sometimes lined, built to hold a surplus through the lean stretch. In the right spot, a single mammoth dropped in autumn and stashed in the cold could feed a group for a serious chunk of winter. The frost that was starving you also became your refrigerator. Where they couldn't freeze it, they transformed it. They dried meat and fish into something thin, light, and nearly unspoilable, food you could stack and ration. They rendered fat and stored it separately, because fat was the most precious currency of the cold. Later, peoples pressed dried meat and fat into dense preserved cakes that lasted months and traveled anywhere. And some cultures went further and rotted food on purpose. Controlled fermentation, burying fish or meat, so it broke down in a way that preserved it and even added nutrients. Sounds revolting to you. To them, a buried stash of fermented fish might have been the whole difference between March and a grave. Winter didn't just teach humans to hunt, it turned them into chemists and warehouse managers. But a full storage pit still won't save you if you freeze in the night. So the other half of the countdown was heat, and it ran on two inventions that quietly changed everything. The first is fire, which in winter stopped being comfort and became a second sun you had to build, feed, and guard every single day. But fire only warms the side facing it. The real breakthrough, the thing that let humans march into genuinely brutal cold, was clothing. Not a hide tossed over your shoulders. Fitted, layered, sewn clothing that traps warm air against the skin and shuts out the wind. And that took one almost magical little tool, the eyed needle. A sliver of bone with a hole drilled through it, so you could pull sinew through hide and stitch it to shape. We even have a poster child. When they found Ötzi, the 5,300-year-old man frozen in the Alps, he was wearing a full cold weather system, layered hides, a grass cloak, a bearskin cap, and shoes stuffed with grass for insulation. That's not a costume. That's engineering. And it goes back much further, hidden in a bizarre place. Body lice only evolved to live in clothing, and the DNA clock on them suggests humans have been wearing fitted garments possibly over 100,000 years. Tailored clothing is the technology that let a tropical animal walk into an ice age and live. Now here's where it gets bigger. Look at what all of this actually required. To survive winter, you couldn't just react to the world in front of you. You had to picture a world that didn't exist yet, a frozen, empty, starving one, months away, while you stood in warm sun surrounded by food. And then act on that imaginary future right now. Hunt more than you need today. Dry meat you won't touch for months. Dig a pit for a hunger you can't yet feel. Carve needles in autumn for a cold that hasn't arrived. Winter forced humans to live in the future. It rewarded the groups that could plan, save, and trade a comfortable today for a survivable tomorrow, and it quietly deleted the ones that couldn't. That is a staggering mental leap. Most animals live in the present because the present is all they've got. But a human facing winter had to hold an entire invisible season in their head and organize 30 people around it. When to move to the winter camp, how much to store, who sews, who guards the cache, how the food gets shared when one family's supply runs out before another's. Winter didn't just test bodies, it trained minds to think ahead, to cooperate, to trust that work now pays off later. Some researchers suspect this harsh, predictable, deadly rhythm was one of the great pressures that shaped how we plan, save, and understand time itself. So picture the whole thing. For most of human history, the first frost started a countdown, and to beat it, your ancestors did all of it. They charged their own bodies like batteries in autumn. They turned frozen ground into a freezer and hid their food inside the enemy. They dried and rendered and fermented, wringing every last month out of one kill. They lit fires and stitched fitted clothes with needles of bone, so a hairless tropical animal could stand inside an ice age. And above all, they learned to see a future they weren't living in yet, and prepare for it while there was still time. You don't take that test anymore. You open a fridge in January and it's full. You turn a dial and the air goes warm. The countdown that ruled human life for hundreds of thousands of years, the one that decided who saw spring, got switched off so completely you forgot it was ever running. But it's the reason you can plan and save and imagine next year at all. Your ancestors didn't beat winter by being tougher than the cold. They beat it by outsmarting a future that hadn't happened yet. And every time you prepare for something you can't quite see coming, you're doing the oldest human thing there is.